Dear students, good morning. This is all about literary criticism or critical reading of the world famous classics produced by of the European vernacular. This paper, the second the semester 2019 and 20, concentrates on criticism and various aspects of criticism like the nature of criticism, four kinds of meaning by I. Richards, the nature of criticism by Herbert Reed, tradition and individual talent by one of the greatest poets of English literature, T.S. Eliot, and some of the writings of Virginia Woolf also have been included. The function criticism has been one of the important studies of European literature. Of course, later on it made a great influence on the classics of the world. And literature of different country, culture and community have been discussed under the light of criticism. But the meaning and the definition of criticism has been changed according to the situation and perspective of a writer. Wordsworth holds the critical power very low. Influentially, and he said today that if the quantity of the time consumed in writing critics on the works of other were given to original composition of whatever kind it might be, it would be much better employed. It would be make a man find out sooner his own level, and it would do infinitely less mischief. A false or malicious criticism may do much injury to the minds of others. A stupid invention, either in prose or verse, it is quite harmless. Too much to expect of a poor human nature that a man capable of producing some effect in one line of literature should, for the greater good of society, voluntarily doom himself to impotence and obscurity in other. Still less is this to be expected from men addicted to the composition of the false or malicious criticism, of which Wordsworth speaks. However, everybody would admit that a false or malicious criticism had better never have been written. Everybody too would be willing to, as a general proposition, that the critical faculty is lower than inventive. But it is true that criticism is really in itself a baneful and injurious employment. It is true that all time given to writing critics on the works of others would be much better employed if it were given to original composition of whatever kind this may be. Is it true that later Johnson had better have producing more events instead of writing of the poets? Is it certain that died in making his celestial sonnets than when he made his celebrated preface too full of criticism and criticism of works of others? Wordsworth was himself a great critic, and it is to be sincerely regretted that he has not left us more criticism. Goethe, one of the famous thinkers of the world, was one of the greatest of critics also. And we may sincerely congratulate our left us so much of criticism. Without wasting time or the exaggeration which Wordsworth's judgment on criticism or an attempt to trace the causes. Not difficult, I think, to be traced, which may have led Wordsworth to this exaggeration. A critic with advantage size an occasion for trying his own conscience and for asking himself of what real service at any given moment the practice of criticism either is or may be made to his own mind and spirit and to the minds and spirits of others. The critical power lower rank than the creative. I repeat, the critical power is of lower rank than true. But in this proposition, one or two things are to be kept in mind. It is undeniable that the exercise of creative power, that a free creative activity is the highest function of man. It is proved to be so by man's finding in it his true happiness. But it is undeniable also that men may have the sense of exercising this pre-creative act in other ways than in producing great works of literature or art. If it were not so, very few men would be shut out from the true happiness of all men. They may have it in well-doing, learning, they may have it even in criticizing. This is one thing to be kept in mind. Another is that the exercise of the creative power in the production of great works of literature or art, however high this exercise of it may rank, is not at all epochs and under all conditions possible. And that, therefore, labor may be vainly spent in attempting it, which might with more fruit in preparing for it, in rendering it possible. This creative power of works with materials. What if it has not those materials, those elements ready for its use? In that case, it must be surely wait till they are ready. Now, in literature, I will limit myself to literature For it is about literature that the question arises. The elements with which the creative power works are ideas. The best ideas, even on every matter which literature touches, current at the time. We may lay it down as certain that in the modern literature, no manifestation of the creative not working with these can be very important. And I say current at the time, not mere accessible at the time. For creative literature or for creative literary genius does not principally show itself in discovering new ideas. That is rather the business of the philosopher. The grand work of literary genius is a work of synthesis and exposition, not of analysis and discovery. Its gift lies in the faculty of being happily inspired by a certain intellectual and spiritual atmosphere, by a certain order of ideas when it finds itself in them, of dealing divinely with these ideas, presenting them in the most effective ways and attractive combinations, making beautiful works with them, in short. But it must have the atmosphere. It must find itself amidst the order of ideas in order to work freely. And these it is not so easy to command. This is why great creative epochs in literature are so rare. This is why there is unsatisfactory in the production of many real genius. Because for the creation of a master work of literature, two powers must be conquered: the power of the man and the power of the moment. And the man is not enough without the moment. The creative power has, for its happy exercise, appointed elements, and those elements are not in its own control. Nay, they are more within the control of the critical power. It is the business of a critical power, as I said in the words of already quoted, in all theology, philosophy, history, art, science, to see the objects as in itself is. Thus, it tends at last, it tends at last to make an intellectual situation of which the creative power can profitably avail itself. It tends to establish an order of ideas, if not absolutely true, yet true by comparison with that which it displaces, to make the best ideas prevail. Presently, these new ideas reach society. The touch of truth is touch of life, and there is a growth everywhere. Out of this stir and growth come the creative epochs of literature. Or to narrow and quite these considerations of the general march of genius of society, considerations which are apt to become too abstract and and impalpable. Everyone can see that a poet, for instance, ought to know ought to know life and the world before dealing with them in poetry. And world being in modern times very complex, the creation of the modern poet to be much implies a great critical effort behind it. Else, it must be comparatively poor, barren, and short lived affair. This is why Byron's poetry had so little endurance in it, and Goethe's so much. Both Byron and Goethe had a great productive power, but Goethe's was nourished by a great critical effort providing the true materials for it, and Byron's was not. No doubt, Byron is one of the important romantic poets. Goethe knew life and the world, the poet's necessary subjects, intensively and thoroughly than Byron. A great more of them, and he knew them much more as they really are. Thus, criticism, the definitions of criticism, the explanations of criticism depend on the insights of the writer and sincerity of the writer. This is how criticism works in appreciating and propagating a writer and a